Hey, and welcome to another episode of Rankum. This is going to be a fun one. We're talking about top 12 directors of the 90s. I've done similar things like this when I did decades defining actors and actresses and all that of certain decades before. But we've got a great panel here. We've got Alan Smithy. Alan, how's it going?
I'm having an excellent Friday night here. How are you guys doing?
Great.
All right.
Doing good. And going around, we've got Jonathan McCarrow. Jonathan, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. It's going to be a good start to a busy weekend for me. A lot of things happening, Schmodown included. Yeah, and also this one. So we're going to have some fun with this.
Yeah.
Yep. And last but not least, we've got Chadwick. Chadwick, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. I was born and grew up in the 90s, so I'm excited to see what other people come up with and see if I can get some good names on this list.
All right. I was born in the 70s.
But
So, anyway.
But how this works is we're going to go around the table. Everyone's going to throw out a director that they think belongs on the top 12 directors of the 90s list. This is going to be interesting because there's so many different ones out there that were around at this time. And I mean, obviously it doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. It does get based on the filmography that they put out in the 90s. But yeah. But that being said, because last thing is because it's a 4-person panel, the person who nominates it, their vote won't matter. It's going to come down to the other 3 people whether they make the list.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But I'm going to go to Alan first. Alan, who's the first director you're going to nominate?
Okay, well, I'm going to go with a not as majorly obvious choice, but definitely a filmmaker that started his wonderful work in the 90s, and that is Steven Soderbergh. Now, being that I said I was born in the 70s, I was in high school in the 90s, and I remember he made Sex, Lies, and Videotape in the 80s, but then his next film was Kafka, which isn't even available on DVD or Blu-ray, and I remember seeing that on Laserdisc, and I just thought it was a brilliant sophomore effort, beautiful black and white Jeremy Irons. And also King of the Hill, which was his next film, was a period film and an independent, very small movie. It was one of the first movies I think Adrian Brody was in. But as he moves along, he makes Out of Sight. And finally, I love the movie The Limey with Terrence Stamp. So that was a very experimental 90s movie.
Jonathan, what do you say about Steven Soderbergh?
Soderbergh, he is a good director. Unfortunately, as I was looking at the 90s, I'm not as familiar with his work, except for Out of Sight, which is a great movie. Kafka, I have heard of. It's a good movie. And then the rest of them I have never seen. So, and I got to be honest, I don't think he was not on my list. If we're talking about the 2000s, then that would be a whole other conversation, which is he would be on the list. But for now, I'm going to vote no.
Chad, what do you say about Steven Soderbergh?
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna be like a lot like him over there because basically, growing up in the 90s, I haven't been able to go through like a lot of my backlog of things. So a lot of mine are like kids movies, PG-13 movies, stuff like that. But and just like really popular ones. And I think like a lot of the ones that from him, like Soderbergh didn't start to get like super popular, I think, until like Traffic and stuff like that in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I recently watched Aaron Brockovich, Traffic. I've seen, I think, all the Oceans or whatever. And, so if it were 2000s, maybe. But yeah, and I've heard Sex, Lies, and Videotape is great, but that wouldn't even count for this list. So
correct. That was 80s.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll say no.
Yeah. Sadly, I have to echo everyone else. I've not seen any of his movies from the 90s,
Okay.
so I really can't judge his directing from this. But yeah, Jonathan, we go to you for your first nomination.
Yeah. I'm actually, I was a little surprised you picked Soderbergh for your first pick. I'm gonna go with the other Steven Spielberg. I'm gonna nominate him. He did start off a little shaky with Hook, in my opinion. I don't love Hook, but he did go off the deep end. I mean, not go off the deep end, but he took off with Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in '93. That itself is quite an accomplishment. And then he went to Lost World, Amistad, and Saving Private Ryan. So he made a lot of great movies, had a lot of influential movies to today's movies regarding visual effects. I mean, Jurassic Park has the best looking dinosaur, the best looking T-Rex so far. So, and he won 2 directing Oscars for Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. So I'm going to nominate Steven Spielberg.
Chad, what do you say about Steven Spielberg?
Yeah, I had to go look this up. This is a pretty deep cut. I was like, who are you talking about? Steven who? No, just kidding. Anyways, Steven Spielberg's definitely on my list. I mean, that's kind of one of the obvious ones, but there's a reason why, because he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Not a lot of people like Hook. I love Hook. I was one of the, I was the market age or whatever for that movie, and it's one of my childhood movies. I didn't actually watch Jurassic Park that much as a kid, but and I mean, I'm definitely not going to watch Schindler's List as a kid, but as an adult, I've gone back to some of these, and at least 4 of these I love. And Saving Private Ryan still has one of the best opening scenes of all time. And some people say maybe it should have won Best Picture there, but that's for a different time, I guess. But yes, I'm definitely saying yes to Steven Spielberg, of course.
But yeah, I'm also saying this to Steven Spielberg. Everything he's done in the 90s, I love. Whether it's Hook, Jurassic Park, Saving Private Ryan is probably my least favorite one of this, but I still think it's a good movie. I'm always at the camp that I'm not unhappy with it losing to Shakespeare in Love for Best Picture. So, Alan, what would you have said about Steven Spielberg?
Well, since we're very good friends, Spielberg and I. But anyway, he was on my list. When I first saw Hook, I loved it, but over the years, I've kind of not enjoyed revisiting as much. But still, when I was younger, I thought it was fantastic. But Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, I think, are movies that kind of changed a lot of how war is depicted in films. Amistad is a fantastic movie. The soundtrack in that movie never stops, though. That's something that always annoyed me. I'm like, John Williams, take a scene off, But ultimately, Spielberg, I think, has to be on this list. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. This year was the first time I've watched Hook. And, it just didn't do it for me. So.
Right. You got to watch it when you're a kid.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of those ways you got to watch it at the right time. But Chad, who's the first director you're going to bring up?
All right. So I don't know if anyone else is going to bring him up. So I figure now's the best time to do it with my first pick. I love horror movies. So of course I'm going to go with a guy who started before the 90s, but then ramped everything up, basically kind of popularizing a genre here with meta horror, and that's Wes Craven. One of my all-time favorite horror franchises is Scream, and Scream 1 and Scream 2 are like the best ones in that franchise. And then you also have New Nightmare, which some people think is the best of the Freddy movies in the 90s, not the 80s. So, I don't know if I agree with that, but if you talk about like meta horror and like a lot of movies that we see now that do stuff like that, I feel like Wes Craven was influential in that way. So I feel like, and he has other movies like The People Under the Stairs, Vampire in Brooklyn. I actually haven't seen Vampire in Brooklyn, but yeah, he has a lot of really great horror entries in the 90s. So Wes Craven.
But yeah, this is definitely an interesting one to go with, is I do think Wes Craven is great with his things. I think Scream is okay at best. Like, although I say that now, but I haven't seen them since they first come out, so I do plan on revisiting them. But one of the movies that he directed in the 90s, which seems so out of place with everything else, is it's called Music of the Heart, which is a musical drama movie, and amongst all these horror movies he did, so it's like, that's so out of place. I haven't actually seen it, so I don't know much about it. But I'm gonna give it a slight no to Wes Craven, just because I think there's so many other ones that have had so much bigger impact on the 90s. But Wes Craven is a good pick. Alan, what do you say about Wes Craven?
Well, I thought about including Wes Craven on my list because I think for his whole filmography, he is a genius horror director. The truth is, though, I enjoyed Scream 1, but I'm not a huge fan, and I really didn't get much out of the sequels because I felt they were so similar. I really do like The People Under the Stairs because it's a good movie about social commentary mixed in with horror. But yeah, I'm not as huge of a Scream fan, and I've never seen Vampire in Brooklyn. I think people tend to look at that as not one of his greatest because it's got kind of a comedy slant. So I would have to say no to Wes Craven, but we'll see if there's a tiebreaker coming.
But Jonathan, what would you have said about Wes Craven?
That is an interesting choice. He's on my long list. Scream and Scream 2 are really good movies, in my opinion. Music of the Heart was not bad. I actually liked that one. It was a very underrated performance by Meryl Streep. I have not seen New Nightmare. I have seen Vampire in Brooklyn. And the People Under the Stairs I have never seen. So, but he did create an impact in the 90s of what's the word, of reintroducing or reinventing the horror genre with Scream, because he parodied of a lot of the classic horror movies. They basically invented stupid mistakes for this first Scream movie, and then Scream 2, they made fun of the sequels. And I think because of that alone, I would have gone yes.
All right.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but if that Wes Craven sadly doesn't make the list, but I think if we not do other directors' decades lists, he probably will make it, because I think that he's stronger in other decades in this one. But anyway, it's on to me. And for my next one, I'm going to bring up a Schmodown competitor who you may see competing to Mohu. Kevin Smith started his viewer skew verse in the 90s. Clerks, Moretz, Chasing Amy, and Dogma. A good movies. I enjoyed some of the later ones in there a little bit more, but I don't hate these ones. I think the way he does comedy, I think, really works in this. But I think he does belong on this list for what he did with comedy, because he kind of has his own take when it comes to comedy, and I think these movies are really fun. But Alan, what do you say about Kevin Smith?
Well, he didn't occur to me initially, but I will say that I love Clerks because I think it's a very rare example of more or less what amounts to being a homemade movie that I saw in the theater. And again, not a huge fan, but I've seen his movies. I was drawn to watch, Mallrats and Dogma, etc. So, for the sake of he also represents the 90s pretty well, the sort of alternative culture. So I'll throw him on the list there.
Jonathan, what would you say about Kevin Smith?
Okay. So I have a love and hate relationship with his movies. Look, the 2010s Kevin Smith, I did not like any of his movies. But we're talking about the 90s. And the first movie I did see from 90s is Chasing Amy, and that was a very good movie. That movie holds up in high regard for me. In terms of how a relationship is viewed by a straight guy and also a lesbian. So that was interesting. Clerks I did see for the first time. It was really good. I really like that movie. And Dogma and Mallrats I haven't seen yet. But because, I really like Clerks, I think he really opened the door for one of the few people who really opened the door for indie comedy with Clerks. So I'm going to go a surprising yes on this.
But Chad, what would you have said about Kevin Smith?
Yeah, I would have absolutely said yes to Kevin Smith. I mean, I'm not a huge Kevin Smith fan. I know there are people who are like really big Kevin Smith fans. I'm not that guy, but I have seen quite a few of his movies. I've seen all of these that are in the 90s. Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, and Dogma. I think Dogma might be my favorite. I just love the religious aspect of it. I think it's really funny. But it's just like what Jonathan said about, indie comedy and just like, making these movies in New Jersey with his friends, on a small budget, and just like, you're like, it's just like what he's able to do basically with just in like a little convenience store with just a bunch of dialogue talking about Star Wars and, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's really engaging despite, being very simple and just dialogue heavy. And just the way he writes dialogue in these movies, especially Clerks, I think is really fantastic. And I think, Kevin Smith is probably one of these guys that have like inspired a lot of filmmakers down the line. So to start, making projects, so definitely yes for Kevin Smith. Yeah,
they're very resonant. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I guess Rachel Silverstein is going to be happy with this. Right. On the list.
It's good. We all agree too. We all agree. So.
Yeah.
There you go.
But with that, we go back to Alan for his next nomination.
Okay, so my first one might have been a little too obscure, but I'm going to go with Joel Coen. And notice I said Joel Coen and not the Coen brothers. Ethan Coen's a producer. Joel Coen is the director. Mm-hmm. And look, I think that they started out amazing. Miller's Crossing is a brilliant movie. Barton Fink is basically one of my favorite of their movies all time. And they made what I think is pretty much considered their classic in the 90s, which is Fargo. And you can't beat The Dude and The Big Lebowski. It's basically become a cult film. And many people all over the place love that movie, I included. I actually met the real Dude one time. And he's a movie producer they based the character on, but he had a jacket that said The Dude. So I'm going Joel Coen. If you guys want to call it the Coen brothers, I'm fine with that too. Just saying. What do you think?
But Jonathan, what do you say about the Coen brothers?
It's a heavy yes for me. I think that I just saw Miller's Crossing for the first time this year, and it is a very restrained, slow-moving, but also observant gangster film from the point of view of a hitman. And I think that's one of the more underrated crime films in the genre. Barton Fink, I have seen a long time ago. I don't remember it quite well, but I did like it. I've never seen Hudsucker Proxy. Fargo is one of my favorite movies of all time. And The Big Lebowski, it's grown on me. The first time, it was just good. Like, it was fine. But for some reason, I wanted to watch it more and more to see what details I've missed and what jokes I've missed. And yeah, it kind of invented a religion for him first, for the dude. So yeah, 100% yes.
All right.
Coen Brothers.
But Chad, what do you say about the Coen brothers?
Yeah, I like what you did there with Joel Coen actually directed these.
Yeah.
I like that, but
Funny.
because most people just say the Coen brothers. But
Right.
I actually recently just went through, like, I was like, I'm gonna watch all the Coen brothers films, and I started with Blood Simple. I went through Raising Arizona. Raising Arizona is one of my favorites.
Great movie.
And then I did watch Miller's Crossing, and I really liked that one. So I know the first two don't count, not the 90s, but Miller's Crossing is a great, like what you say, kind of like mob film or whatever. Really, really awesome. I haven't seen Barton Fink, and I haven't seen the Hudsucker Proxy, but that doesn't matter because Fargo is one of the best films ever made. So you have that, and then you have The Big Lebowski. And I know not everyone loves The Big Lebowski, but like you're saying, it's a cult film, and you either get it or you don't, I guess. It's more about the characters than it is about the plot. If you think the plot's a little contrived or whatever. But I think what they did in the 90s, and then what they were able to do past that with stuff like No Country for Old Men and A Serious Man Inside Llewyn Davis. They're just like one of the all-time greatest filmmakers, and they have some of their best work, Fargo, in the 90s. So yes, Coen Brothers for sure.
But yeah, with that, Coen Brothers does make the list. But yeah, for me, the only one of the Coen Brothers movies I've seen that they did in the 90s is The Big Lebowski. I've still yet to see Fargo. I'm trying to get onto that as possible. It's just not really streaming new for me. And it's always out but it is one of my blind spots I do plan on going to see because everyone keeps telling me it's the best film ever made. But that being said, I still would have said yes just based on the strength of The Big Lebowski because I really love that movie. And yeah, Jonathan, we go back to you for your next nomination.
Man, earlier for lunch, I had what did I have for lunch? Oh, I had a fish. So I had fish, but I was sad that I didn't have a Royale with cheese, and that really pained me. So, but it doesn't matter because fish is healthy. So what are you going to do? I'll have a Royale with cheese someday. So I'm going to pick Quentin Tarantino. I'm going to nominate Tarantino.
Nice.
Look, with Reservoir Dogs, I just saw it again this year. I did like it a little more. It's not one of my favorites, but his way of dialogue is, it's noticed. It's noticed in the movie where it's mostly in one room, all about the characters until it, ends with a big, bombastic Mexican standoff. And then he wrote True Romance, and maybe there could be a potential director later. Pulp Fiction, though, this is the movie that really opened the door for indie movies in general. That movie, when I was looking up Pulp Fiction, that was the movie that kind of defined '94 alongside Forrest Gump and Shawshank Redemption and The Lion King. So that was one. That's a great movie. That's one of my favorites. And then he wrote From Dusk Till Dawn, and then he made Jackie Brown, which again I did see again for another time, and I liked it more. It's a more mature Tarantino film, more character driven than action driven. So I'm going to nominate Tarantino.
But Tarantino is on the board. Chad, what do you say about Tarantino?
Say what again? That's what I say. So, no, like Quentin Tarantino. I'm really big on Quentin Tarantino. He's one of my favorites. I love watching pretty much every single movie he's ever made. You know, I've seen them all. Yeah. And you know, I love every single one, including Reservoir Dogs and Jackie Brown. I know Pulp Fiction is the big, you know, movie that he did in the 90s. I think some of his later work is actually kind of better, including like Inglourious Bastards and Django. But you know, these three movies are so good. They're just so good. I mean, Pulp Fiction, just like what I was talking about earlier, and what Jonathan just said about, you know, with Kevin Smith doing a lot of dialogue heavy work. So does Quentin Tarantino, and I love that about his movies. It's just he's able to, like, you know, basically tell the plot through the dialogue in like such a way to not make it, you know, where it's boring or, you know, I mean, just people talking, you know, the whole time. It's interesting and it's great. And you know, someone shoots Marvin in the face. So you know, it's yeah. Quentin Tarantino is the best. I love him. Yes.
I met Marvin one time.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
But yeah, this one's tough. I really love Pulp Fiction. I do think, but I do think that Reservoir Dogs and Jackie Brown are good movies. But I do think that he was better in late past the 90s. I'm going to actually give him a slight no, but it's all going to come down to Alan. Alan, what do you say about Quentin Tarantino?
Well, I actually almost have the opposite view, where I liked his earlier films a little better. I just think I'm going to go with a yes on Quentin Tarantino, because I think Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction are fantastic movies. I especially love Pulp Fiction, and I know that later in his career, he, like Inglourious Bastards, has a similar kind of structure that moves around and isn't focused in one place like Pulp Fiction. But that movie, I think, just made such an impact on the audience. People were loving that movie when it came out. And I also think Jackie Brown is one of the better Elmore Leonard adaptations, because sometimes Elmore Leonard gets done with too much comedy. And I think Jackie Brown really nailed that balance of like comedy, but you know, Sam Jackson's character is a serious threat throughout. So I'm going to go yes with Quentin Tarantino. And he was on my list too, so.
But with that, we go to Chad for his next nomination.
All right, we'll see if I can get this one to make it. I don't know. Maybe. This guy's a little problematic, but I don't know if it was in the 90s or what, so it might not count. This guy's a little problematic. However, he did make my childhood. It's John Lasseter. You know, this dude basically created Pixar. You know, and he wasn't just like a suit. He basically, you know, he created it from the ground up after being fired from Disney or whatever. And he hasn't directed a lot of them, but he directed a lot of them in the 90s. He directed Toy Story, A Bug's Life, and Toy Story 2. And I think the Toy Story franchise, I mean, it's one of the best trilogies ever made. And then also, I think right now it's one of the best quadrilogies ever made. And Toy Story 1 and 2 are some of the best ones. I think A Bug's Life is good, maybe not great, but you know, they're just finding their footing as a company, basically inventing a new way to do animation. And you know, now Pixar is what it is. And you know, maybe some of the movies that came later, people love more from the Pixar catalog. But I mean, can you really say no to Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2? So, and yeah, I'm not going to talk much about he also directed Cars, but that's not the 90s. So, yeah, John Lasseter.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one because, well, yes, like directing animation is still directing. because I love the first Toy Stories and Bugs Life. But compared to some of the other ones that are on my list, I'm probably going to lean towards no on this one. Nothing against those movies. I just don't think that overall it's enough to get them onto this list. But I could be wrong here, but we'll see. Alan, what do you say about John Lasseter?
Well, to be fair, I'm not the best judge of Pixar. The films don't appeal to me as much as others. My favorite Pixar movies are from Brad Bird, which are Ratatouille and The Incredibles. So I would say no myself. I don't want to go into the controversy though, but that's definitely there. So.
And Jonathan, what would you have said about John Lasseter?
Toy Story is one of my favorite movies, not just favorite animated movies, but favorite movies in general. Yeah, but unfortunately he was not on my list. I didn't really think of him as the director, more because of more people involved in the making of those movies. It's not just him. Right. So, but that is a good pull for bringing up Lasseter, despite that he's problematic in real life. So, yeah.
But with that, it comes to me for my next nomination, and I'm going to go for bring up a female director. I'm bringing up Nora Ephron. Like in the 90s, she did Sleepless in Seattle, Mixed Nuts, Michael, You Got Mail, All I Want. No, she didn't direct that one. She only produced that one. And This Is My Life. I've seen Sleepless in Seattle, You Got Mail, Michael, Mixed Nuts. I haven't seen all the way through, but I've seen enough to know that it's really well directed. But it's one of those ones, like when it comes to female directors, like they've been around a lot, but there wasn't really a lot of prolific ones in the 90s. I think Nora Ephron is probably one of the most notable ones that deserves to be on this list. But Alan, what do you say about Nora Ephron?
Well, I agree, and I think that we do absolutely need female directors on this list. Sleepless in Seattle is a fantastic movie, and it definitely made waves when it came out, and lots of people loved it. And You've Got Mail is an interesting follow-up, but I haven't seen Mixed Nuts or Michael. So I'd be basing my whole decision basically on those two films. But I would say that she is probably one of the more major female directors in the 90s. So I will say yes to Nora Ephron.
Jonathan, what do you say about Nora Ephron?
Okay. Sleepless in Seattle, it's good. It's a good movie. You've Got Mail, I actually like more than Sleepless in Seattle. I thought it was more... it was charming. I like that they were both bookstore rivals. That was interesting. I've never seen Michael, so I cannot really comment on that, or This Is My Life. But Mixed Nuts. Ooh, boy. Mixed Nuts. I found nothing positive about that movie. Ooh. It was just really... I really detested that movie. Yeah, and I'm a fan of Steve Martin. I'm a big fan of Steve Martin. And yeah, I mean, if we're going 80s, I would think about more, yes, but the 90s, I do have a couple of female directors on my list, but she's not one of them. So I'm going to vote no. I do have a couple of female directors.
But Chad, what do you say about Nora Ephron? You was kind of decided on this.
Yeah, I know. This is hard. Cause I mean, I've every single time I've done a rank 'em and I haven't seen a lot of the movies, I usually just say no. Or if I haven't seen the movie, if it's like a movie one, I usually just say no. I haven't seen it. Sorry, I can't. Whatever. I do agree that a woman should be on this list because representation. But I don't know if that necessarily needs to be the only criteria. I had her list up. I've heard of a lot of these, and I've seen 2 of them, but the 2 that I saw, I was like a child. So I've seen Michael and I've seen Sleepless in Seattle. I was a child when I saw them. And I remember liking Michael, but as far as I understand, it's I was with the child brain, and it's probably not that great of a movie. But I think she makes a lot of really good like rom-coms. I just really need to revisit a lot of them. So yeah, I think I'll just have to say no too, because I don't know. It's hard when you just haven't seen a lot of them and you're not exactly excited about them. So
Yeah, no, that's entirely fair. But with that, we go back to Alan for his next nomination.
All right, well, here we go with another, perhaps even the most obvious choice for this list, Martin Scorsese, who made Goodfellas and Casino in the 90s. I think Martin Scorsese's been a good filmmaker in every decade of his filmography, and each decade has like a hit, like Taxi Driver in the 70s and Raging Bull in the 80s. And I think that Goodfellas isn't necessarily his best film, but it's considered maybe like top 3. I love Casino. I also really like, and it's a little underrated, The Age of Innocence, which is an absolutely fantastic movie. And it's Scorsese kind of going in a different direction in terms of the subject, but still providing the same visual flair. And let's see here, what else? He's closing it out with Kundun and Bringing Out the Dead. Kundun's okay movie, not my favorite. And Bringing Out the Dead, I don't remember much of anything about that movie. I think there was a Schmodown question about which 90s Scorsese movie got no nominations.
Yeah.
And after 3 repeats, The Barbarian got Bringing Out the Dead, which is the one that it's just not as good. But going on the strength of Goodfellas, and also Cape Fear was made in that decade. And that was his most financially successful movie at the time, if you guys care about that sort of thing. But anyway, what do you think?
Jonathan, what do you say about Martin Scorsese?
It's a yes. Goodfellas is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I'll leave it at that. Casino is really good. I do agree with Alan, The Age of Innocence. That's a really good movie. It's an underrated movie for sure. It deals with more of the emotional and psychological violence in that movie than it is for the physical violence in most of his mob movies. Cape Fear, I'm not a fan of, but I loved De Niro's performance. I mean, I'll do it again. Counselor. I mean, he's scary in that movie. So I do applaud him for doing that remake. Kundun, again, yeah. Bringing Out the Dead, I did like it. I need to watch it again. I don't remember much from it. But on the strength of Goodfellas, Age of Innocence, Casino, and some of Cape Fear, I'm going to go yes.
All right.
Chad, what do you say about Martin Scorsese?
So I actually didn't put Scorsese on my list, and I was sitting there when I was looking through directors, I was like, someone's going to bring him up, and I'll probably say yes. But as I was just looking through his filmography again, I think he's much stronger in a lot of the other decades, and especially later. I think Hugo is one of my favorite movies of his, and it's not like a mob movie. So, Silence is great. But if we go strictly 90s, I think Goodfellas is fantastic, one of the best. But the only other one I've seen from him in the 90s was Cape Fear. And I actually just put, there's a Criterion release of Age of Innocence that I just put on my Christmas list. And I'm definitely going to start watching more Scorsese. But I just think that for me, since I've only seen one, that I just really can't judge Scorsese's breadth of filmography in the 90s specifically. If it was all time, definitely. But I'm gonna have to go no for 90s.
No, that's entirely fair. I mean, there's a lot of directors in which the early stuff has just gone sort of lost to you. But this is an easy yes for me. Like, I literally just saw Goodfellas, Casino, and The Age of Innocence this year. So, and for the first time, they're all just really great movies, and there are enough to get him on here. I actually haven't seen the other ones that he's done. I think I've seen Cape Fear, but I'm not too sure about. But Martin Scorsese makes
Cape
it.
Fear.
But with that, we go back to Jonathan for your next nomination.
Well, we're going back to female directors, and even though Nora Ephron was not the one that I had on my list, I'm gonna bring up. Who do I pick? Yeah, I'll pick her. Penny Marshall. Penny Marshall's career in the 90s was interesting. Awakenings is a good movie. I actually really like that movie. It's a very nice, hopeful film about him finding a medicine for people who are
I think they have Parkinson's.
Parkinson's. Thank you. I think it's that. Yeah. Thank you. A League of Their Own. I'm growing to like more and more. The Preacher's Wife. I thought it was fine. I thought it was all right. Yeah, it's based on The Bishop's Wife. It's a movie starring Danny DeVito about a fired ad executive who gets a job as a teacher in the army. I think that's what it was. And I laughed here and there, but I kind of liked it as a whole. But yeah, Penny Marshall.
Chad, what do you say about Penny Marshall?
So I just basically vetoed Nora Ephron. I could have passed her. I vetoed on her, and now we have Penny Marshall here, and I'm sitting here thinking about this. I mean, Jonathan just nominated her, and he didn't even really sound that excited about any of the movies, to be honest. So I'm like, I don't know, like, and I actually haven't seen any of them. I will say,
A League of Their Own?
I haven't seen that one yet. No, I've seen clips of it or parts of it or whatever. I think there is crying in baseball sometimes, but honestly, I would have more confidence to say yes to her if Big was in the 90s, because Big is so good, but it's not, and I haven't seen any of them, so I can't say yes to.
Oh,
I want to see them though.
But yeah, this is one that is tough for me because realistically, this is the only decade one that she could actually appear on, because like she's only directed like 2 in the 80s and then just 1 in the 2000s. So
yeah.
And I'm going to go based on the League of Their Own because it's the only one I have seen of her movies in this. And I'm going to give her a yes because I think League of Their Own is great, and the other ones sound like movies that I would actually want to go watch it eventually. But yeah, Alan, what do you say about Penny Marshall?
Well, I agree with Jonathan that I love Awakenings. And it's a really emotional movie, and the ending is it gets your heart. And I love the performances. That's an early Peter Stormare performance. He was in a bit part. And A League of Their Own is a great movie. It's very funny, but it definitely has a heart. And I love Gina Davis and Tom Hanks in that movie. The rest of her movies in that decade, I'm not really that familiar with. In fact, one of them I didn't even know she directed. What was it? The Preacher's Wife. I didn't know.
The Preacher's Wife, yeah.
The director of that. I haven't seen that one. But for the fear of not having a woman on this list, I'm going to have to say I'll go a yes with Penny Marshall. Don't want it just to be a dude fest.
I'm actually surprised that we're getting her on the list. That was the one wild card for me, male or female.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a wild card that I don't know how it's going to go, but we'll see when we get there. But Chad, who is your next nomination?
So I feel like this is a good time to nominate this guy. I'm gonna go with my heart here. I love Stephen King. He's my favorite author, so I love really great Stephen King adaptations. And I think this man has directed one of the best movies in the 90s and one of the best films of all time.
Oh, I know.
And I think maybe this movie should have won Best Picture, although I love the movie that did win Best Picture this year in 1994. I'm going to go with Frank Darabont. He directed
That's a tough one.
He directed The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh man.
And The Green Mile. I think those are the only two he directed in the 90s.
Yeah.
But I think it's weird. I was going through a lot of these directors and I was like, well, you need a breadth of movies in the 90s to show like, oh, well, then in the 90s, they were a very prevalent director throughout. And I mean, it's just two, but I think they were spaced out enough to where it's not like, oh, he's the best director of 1994. But I feel like because you have those two, and they're both fantastic, I just think The Shawshank Redemption is one of the best movies ever made. Every single time I watch that movie, you know, it just inspires me with the messages of hope and not just give up, you know, when everything seems bleak and everything is against you. And I just think just on the strength of that one movie alone and the way he directed it, I feel like I had to nominate him from my heart. So Frank Darabont.
But yeah, when you started off with saying you like Stephen King, I thought for a second you were bringing up Stephen King for Maximum Overdrive, and I was going to have to point out that I was going to have to point out that was the 80s, not the
best director of all time.
But Frank Darabont, and this is one of those ones like when it comes to directors, you don't need to have a lot of movies to be considered a good director in this. Sometimes it can only take two movies, which in this case there is only two movies that he did in the 90s, and Shawshank Redemption is a really great movie. I enjoy it. I've said this before in many streams, I'm not a big fan of The Green Mile, but I'm not going to sit here and try and say it's not directed great, because I do think it is well directed and all that, because it is. So I'm going to say yes to Frank Darabont because he is on my list. Alan, what do you say about Frank Darabont?
Well, I'm going to have to become the villain of this piece here, because I'll tell you.
Come to me now.
You're the warden in Shawshank Redemption?
I am bad. I am one of the few people that think that the Shawshank Redemption is corny. And I had already seen, look at his face. He's like, what? I had already seen American Me, which is a serious movie about serious jail time situation. I just always was bothered by the fact that Dufresne is innocent. And I'm like, I would be fine with him being guilty and still getting free. I also think this is not in the same decade, but The Mist is a great example of why I think he's a bad director. He over-directs the actors.
I like him.
He kind of Why no, I don't. And I like half The Mist is like, I love that movie. But the other half where the people are talking is where I'm like, everyone's already, anyway, I don't want to take up too much time. But I will also say, where did Frank Darabont go? And the answer is after directing or producing Walking Dead and being the showrunner. And you can see this on IMDb in his quotes section. He sent horrible emails that if we're talking about toxic work environment, Frank Darabont is toxic. And that's why you don't see him directing any movies anymore. Mm-hmm. Look it up. And he's suing the Walking Dead people. I know this is a hot take, so I'm going to let Jonathan solve the problem. and fix the situation.
Okay.
I'm going to hell, by the way. You know that.
Okay. Shawshank is one of the best movies ever made. Period. The Green Mile, I think you can say it's good or great depending on your mood that day. It is a really good movie. I don't rewatch it as much because it is really emotional, really powerful, and definitely sad. It's a really sad movie. That has one of the saddest death scenes ever. Actually, two of them, if you think about it. But wow, Frank Darabont, that's a great call, man. I feel bad for you, Chad. That I think. Wait, who did you nominate for the first two?
It was
Craven.
John Lasseter and
Craven. Wes
Craven.
Craven. Oh man. Yeah.
I'll get one.
I
Hopefully.
know. Look, I don't have Darabont on my list. And then looking on my long list of directors, I got to be honest with myself. I think there were directors that have a great breadth of filmography in the 90s. I mean, Darabont is basically recognized more for Shawshank Redemption than The Green Mile because Shawshank is so good. Yeah. It's so good of a movie that it's lauded in the history of cinema. Unfortunately, for the 90s, I have more directors listed than Darabont, which I do not have on my list. So I'm sorry, Chad. You're going to go 0 for 3.
That's
fair. A no for me.
I'm sorry. It's my fault. I went full on no. Jonathan gave a soft no, so that's my
It's a soft no, actually. Yeah, it is a soft no.
But yeah,
I was with you with Craven, Chad. I was with you with Wes Craven. That was a good choice.
But I hinted at it earlier. I'm going to go for my wild card now. And I'm going for Peter Jackson. This is one that I don't know how it's going to go because a lot of his earlier stuff from before Lord of the Rings may or not have made it over there. But I'm going for. But he did Brain Dead. He did Heavenly Creatures, and he did The Frighteners. Like Brain Dead is one of those B movies that is a B movie, and it's just one of those ones that is just so bad that it's just entertaining. But Heavenly Creatures and The Frighteners are both really good, and I think based on those ones, I think he deserves on this list. But I wouldn't hate anyone if he doesn't make it either. But Alan, what do you say about Sir Peter Jackson?
Well, the thing is, I do think I like all of the movies he did make in the 90s, but you might have to help me. So he did Brain Dead, which is called Dead Alive in the States, right?
Yeah.
And then Heavenly Creatures and The Frighteners, and that was his whole lineup in the 90s. Well, since it's early on, and we'll see what these other two guys think, I would put him on the list also because The Lord of the Rings are pretty much my favorite movies. Like, those are top for me. Those aren't in the 90s.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying what happened in the 90s led to those movies getting made, I think. And, if he hadn't made The Frighteners, they never would have let him make The Lord of the Rings. So I'll go yes, but we'll see what these other guys think.
Jonathan, what do you say about Peter Jackson?
I'm going to go no because I have not seen Dead Alive or, there's one called Forgotten Silver. I've never seen that.
I saw that one.
The Frighteners, unfortunately, I haven't seen. That was one of the movies I was going to watch in October, but I just couldn't get around to it. Heavenly Creatures was an interesting movie. I kind of liked it, but for some reason it was forgotten in my head. All I knew that was Kate Winslet's. I think was that her first. That was her first role, right? Kate Winslet. It's not Sense and Sensibility.
No. I think that that probably was her first role.
Yeah.
Malcolm.
Yeah, that was an interesting movie. But because I haven't seen many of his movies. If we're talking 2000s, yeah, then he would definitely be on the list. But for the 90s, no.
Have you ever seen Meet the Feebles? You got to watch that movie.
Nope.
But yeah, Heavenly Creatures was her first role.
But,
But Chad, what would you have said about Peter Jackson?
Yeah, basically, I would have to mirror Jonathan there. Like, I get what Alan was saying about, all of this led up to one of the greatest trilogies ever made or whatever. And then, yeah, if it was 2000s directors, for sure. But I think like his directing, his entries in the 2000s outweigh the 90s is kind of how I'm looking at it. But with the 90s, the only one I've seen is The Frightener. And this is also, I've seen it when I was a child. I remember the whole, he's got to like die. So they do the thing on him, the defibrillators. And so, no. Yeah, they do that, but they freeze them first, and then they do the defibrillators. I thought that was really cool when I was a kid, but I can't. On that little premise alone, I can't say yes to Peter Jackson.
That's totally fair. I won't hold it against any of yours. But Alan, what is your next nomination?
Okay, let's see here. I am not the most familiar with this director, but I've seen enough of the films to say Spike Lee should probably be on the list, because Do the Right Thing was 80s, but I think immediately after that he made Mo Better Blues, Jungle Fever. Mo Better Blues is very good. I've never seen Jungle Fever, but then he made Malcolm X. And then let's see, Crooklyn I liked, and Clockers was a good movie. And I ultimately, Summer of Sam is an odd movie, but it's very interesting movie, and a few others in there. But I think that Spike Lee, Malcolm X is one of his biggest movies. And again, Mo Better Blues and a few of the other ones in there are great movies. So what do you think?
Jonathan, what do you say about Spike Lee?
Spike Lee. He is a director I run hot and cold with. I'm not a big fan of Spike Lee. I feel like most of his direction and style is basically like, look at this. This is important. I'm in your face. Most of that time. But in the 90s, I was looking at some of his work, and I recently watched Crooklyn. Hold on a second. I recently watched Crooklyn for the first time, and I did like that movie. I did like that movie a lot. That was very emotional, about a family struggling to grow up in Brooklyn. And Malcolm X, yeah, definitely one of the great biopics of all time. It's fantastic. I've never seen Mo Better Blues. I've not seen Jungle Fever. I think I've seen Clockers. I'm not sure. He Got Game is good. I like that movie. But even though I have not seen this, I heard Four Little Girls, the documentary he did, was very impactful. That it was devastating to watch and witness the news about the death of those four little girls. So despite my reservations for Lee, you know what? I'm going to surprise the three of y'all and the people who are watching. I'm going to go yes.
Chad, what do you say about Spike Lee?
Yeah, this one is definitely tough, because for me, I mean, I'll cut to the chase. I've only seen Malcolm X. For these, I watched it. I believe I watched that and like Selma all in one day during MLK Day, and I was like, well, I gotta, representation. I gotta, watch a lot of these really important films, in like black cinema, but also just in like, it's just like one of the best movies ever made. And Do the Right Thing is too. I kind of wish that we're in the 90s. It would make this way easier.
Yeah.
Because that definitely is one of the best movies ever made. I really need to get more into Spike Lee. I like a lot of his post like 2000s, a lot of his 2010s, like Black Klansman and stuff like that.
I like
Fantastic. But I'll just go ahead and say, because I think he's just one of the best filmmakers ever. And because I liked Malcolm. I mean, it's over 3 hours and it didn't feel like it because it's so great. It's not like a fun watch, but it's a really interesting watch, and I learned a lot from it. And he does a lot of these challenging movies about race and history and stuff like that, and I think he's fantastic. So I'll say yes to Spike Lee for sure.
Yeah, I would have had a really tough job with Spike Lee because I've not seen any of his movies in the 90s. Not even the one that my name is in. So, he makes the list regardless. But yeah, like I've come to Spike Lee very late, and his movies aren't actually, a lot of his movies aren't actually on streaming, which is really sad because I've heard a lot about a whole bunch of them. It's like, I want to see that, but maybe one day I'll invest in the VPN. But yeah, but Jonathan, what is your next nomination?
I'm surprised we have not mentioned this director yet. I mean, we're an hour into this and we have not mentioned him. James Cameron. Terminator 2 is one of the best action sequels ever made. One of the best sequels ever made. True Lies is fun. I actually like True Lies a lot. That was one of my first R-rated movies I saw on cable or on VHS as a kid. It was a lot of fun. Arnold, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold actually giving a good performance. And then the big enchilada, Titanic. I mean, it's a remarkable technical achievement. In 97, the most expensive movie ever made at that time. And it was a really darn good movie, despite what you say right now. Like, if you want to make fun of the romance or the dialogue or whatever, but you have to look at it in the 90s and see and also respect the craftsmanship behind the whole movie. Like, they made a modeled ship of that movie. And that is fantastic. And some of the special effects that I hardly noticed that it was a special effect because it looked real on VHS for sure. And Leo and Kate, one of the best romances of all time. So yeah, James Cameron. I nominate him.
But Chad, what do you say about James Cameron?
I'm only mad that Jonathan said James Cameron because I was about to say Jonathan.
That was your next one?
That was going to be my next one. Yeah, because I mean, look, he's definitely on my list. I have seen all of these movies that he's directed in the 90s. For a long time, I had never seen True Lies, and then I saw True Lies, and now I love True Lies. I think that's a great action movie, nestled in between other two great movies. I don't know if everyone loves Titanic. I think it I don't know if it was a deserved win for Best Picture for certain, but I think it's definitely a great movie and a technical achievement, like you were saying. And a lot of movies nowadays are, kind of mimicking that way of just having a whole scenery be green screen or blue screen or whatever. And they're just all three great movies. And Terminator 2 is one of the best action movies ever made. So I definitely third that. I mean, if you just look at Prestige, it's like even watching True Lies, I was sitting there like, okay, now this is a big action movie. I didn't even expect it to be that big of a movie. And, but it was also about this couple. And so it was big, but also small at the same time. And I don't know, I love all three of these movies. They're spread out so well into the 90s that he just basically, the 90s was kind of James Cameron's time. I feel like, you know, I don't like Avatar that much. I'm not excited for the future of James Cameron, but, you know, let's say at least we have 90s James Cameron, and I would say yes.
And we also have 80s James Cameron.
True.
Yeah. Why isn't True Lies on Blu-ray or 4K? I don't understand that.
Oh, I don't know.
But with that, Alan gave a hot take on Shawshank Redemption. I've said this hot take many times. I'm not a big fan of the Terminator movies. I didn't like Terminator 2.
Okay.
I haven't seen True Lies. I really love Titanic, but once again, I may not be a big fan of Terminator 2, but I do say I do think the direction is good. I'm going to say yes to James Cameron as well.
You don't have to.
I mean, I really like what he did for Titanic. Is just so incredible to me that I think it just deserves to get him on this list. It helps the other two sort of balance it out so much so that. Alan, what would you have said about James Cameron?
Well, I do have him on my list, so I'm going yes. Terminator 2 isn't, I mean, it's a great sequel. It's great in all these ways, but it also, at the time it came out, it really upped the ante for how big movies could be.
Yeah.
And it's also a movie I like to look at because it harkens back to a time where they really drove that semi-truck off the cliff and landed in, they did all those stunts. They flew the helicopter under the overpass. They would never do that kind of thing now. They'd just be like, CG it, it's cheaper, and we don't want to risk any lives. I love True Lies as well, and I think it's interesting that Arnold asked James Cameron to make that movie because Arnold saw some French comedy that was based on. And you also can't deny Titanic is yet another movie that raised the bar. And so he's not necessarily known as being the nicest director in the world. And apparently Kate Winslet hates him, even though she's in Avatar 5 or whatever. But, I will say, like, you know, James Cameron should be on this list. And even though it's not 90s, Aliens is one of my favorite all-time movies. So, you know.
But that, Chad, what is your next nomination?
I gotta be careful here. I want to get somebody on the list. I don't know if I'll make it another round. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with one that is more popular, but also has made, in my opinion, a lot of great movies. And yeah, in fact, I've seen them all. So I'm gonna go with Tim Burton. This guy, you know, you can say that some of his best work is in this decade, because past then, I feel like it was kind of a little bit of a decline there. You know, and he hasn't really, you know, done much recently, but that I feel is really great. Maybe a couple things, but yeah. So he's got Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, Ed Wood, Mars Attacks, and Sleepy Hollow. And for me, I'm like, well, I don't know if like every single one of these is like a fantastic movie or even one of your favorite movies. Maybe. I like all of these. I think my lowest would probably be Mars Attacks, but that was still a big movie. I think my top might be either Edward Scissorhands or Ed Wood. But I think at the end of the day, this guy definitely has his own like distinct style, collaboration with Danny Elfman, and it's just like you know a Tim Burton movie when you see a Tim Burton movie. You know, it's got the fonts, the music, the visuals. You know, Johnny Depp's probably in it, probably, and you know most of these are really good. I think Ed Wood is like really underrated. Not a lot of people talk about that movie, but it's a really good biopic. I recently watched, and yeah, so I mean, he's got his own unique style, and I think some of his best work has been in the 90s. So yeah, and he did a Batman, so or did you? So Tim Burton.
Yeah, so I haven't like the only one out that I haven't seen is Ed Wood. I really love Mars Attacks and Edward's Hands. I think they are great movies. Sleepy Hollow I think is fine. I rewatched Batman Returns recently because it is a Christmas movie, no matter what anyone wants to say. But
Yes.
but it's one of the with Batman Returns. Like it's one of those ones that I kind of don't like it as much as I did used to. I think it's fine. But that being said, I'm going to give him a slight yes, because I do like his style, and even though I do believe that he is better in other decades, some directors can have a lot of great decades as well. So, but Alan, what would you have said about Tim Burton? What do
Well,
you say about Tim Burton? So,
Tim Burton is on my list, so I will say yes. Tim Burton is very mainstream, like James Cameron is also a fairly mainstream choice. But I pretty much love all of these movies. And I think Edward Scissorhands is actually one of his best movies because it's very original. It's not like a Batman or a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And it's really emotional. It kind of works very well. And I'm not a huge Batman Returns guy. I want to revisit it, though, since everyone's talking about it right now. But Ed Wood is great. And some people actually consider that to be one of his best movies, even though it isn't as popular or whatever. But it's so funny, and it's such a good celebration of just people who love movies. And I think Mars Attacks and Sleepy Hollow are fairly frivolous movies. They're not important movies, but I still love them. And I think they have a really amazing look. And especially with Mars Attacks, it's a pretty hilarious movie. So I'm going to go a big yes on Tim Burton. And we'll just hope that maybe he gets back to some of the 90s feel in his future movies. You never know. I don't know. Probably not. No, Disney keeps handing him big paychecks and stuff. So
with that, Tim Burton does make the list. Jonathan, what would you have said?
Well, first off, yay, you got one, Chad. You got one. Tim Burton. Like Spike Lee, I'm hot and cold with too. I don't love his movies. I don't adore them. But one of my favorites is Edward Scissorhands. I actually really like that movie. It's probably my favorite of his movies. I'm not a big Batman Returns person, but again, I will see it again. Like Malcolm said, I do agree that it is a Christmas movie, regardless of what anybody says. Mm-hmm. Edward's great. That's a great movie. Don't forget, he did lend a hand to make The Nightmare Before Christmas, even though he didn't direct it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So we got to keep that in mind because the animation is gorgeous. It's fantastic. Mars Attacks, I hate. I don't like that movie at all. Sleepy Hollow, it's okay. It's fine. I watched that for the first time this Halloween season. It was fine. It was good. But yeah, I would actually give it a slight yes because I think you can compete with the 2000s maybe, but I think the 90s he did make his best work with Scissorhands and Ed Wood. And some of it with The Nightmare Before Christmas, and some of it with Batman Returns. I mean, we have a couple of the best comic book characters come to life with Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman and Danny DeVito's Penguin. So yeah, marginal yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Also in relation to Burton, if you haven't watched the holiday movies that made us, they did do one on Nightmare Before Christmas. And so that one is a really interesting tale of how that one got made. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but watch it. But yeah, for my next one, I'm going to go for someone that I'm surprised hasn't come up until now yet. Because he literally started his career in the 90s with a sequel to a sci-fi movie series I've not seen, Alien. But he did Seven and Fight Club. It's David Fincher. Like Seven and Fight Club are amazing movies. They're just really great. Like he also did The Game, which I haven't seen. So I'm only basing this on 2 movies in this. But I think he's a great director. I mean, he may get the arguments that he was better in Better Decades, which I won't be too sad if that's the reason he doesn't make this list. But Alan, what do you say about David Fincher?
Well, I had him on my list too. I love David Fincher's movies. I actually think early on in many directors' careers is when they're taking more risks visually, and they're more in that student filmmaker kind of phase before they get a little more conservative. I think Seven and Fight Club are brilliantly made movies. They look fantastic. The feel. I also think Alien 3 isn't an awful movie. A lot of people just say Alien and Aliens are it, and the rest of the franchise is bad. People still enjoyed Alien 3, and it did launch his career. And am I missing anyone movie? Let's see here.
The Game.
7, The Game. That's the other one. The Game I wasn't a huge fan of, but it was probably a better movie because he directed it versus someone else. So I would put David Fincher on the list. Again, Fight Club and 7, I think, are incredible. Ooh, what's Jonathan got for us? Looks like he's pulling out his 7 DVD or something.
No, it's the Criterion.
Oh, the
Look
game.
at the game.
Oh, you got The Game. All right.
Yeah, the game.
Well, anyway, that's all I have to say, and I'm giving it thumbs up there.
Jonathan, what do you say about David Fincher?
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't come up on this list. So for me with Fincher, if you think about it, this is high praise for me because you can debate that Fincher has made a great film in each of the decades that he has made movies. Like the 90s, you can debate 7 or Fight Club. 2000s, easily Zodiac. And then 2010s, Social Network for me. I mean, he has a good start with Mank, which it's good, but I don't think it's a great movie. But it's 100% a yes for me, David Fincher. I will agree with Alan that Alien 3 is not that bad. It's a very good technical movie. Mostly because what it was bad is because mostly of the narrative. It's not that strong, but also studio interference. And I don't want to get into a long conversation about that. But 7, it's one of my favorite movies, one of the best crime movies ever made. It looks realistic, as one of the most chilling endings of all time. I mean, what's in the box? Whew. Tony Stark's not going to be happy about that. The Game is a good movie. It's a very inventive movie, despite some holes in the story. And Fight Club is an influential movie. I mean, a lot of people love that movie and still have posters of that movie. Mm. So yeah, David Fincher, he's going on the list.
But Chad, what would you say about David Fincher?
Yeah, so since nothing is riding on this, I can say how I really feel. I don't like Alien 3. I've never seen The Game. I don't like Fight Club that much. I think it's a pretty good movie, but I just don't really like it that much. I don't like Edward Norton like at all. I think he's an unlikable guy. Fuck that guy. Anyways, 7 I think is very overrated, to be honest. I think there's a lot of movies in that type of movie that is way better later, like Prisoners. I think Prisoners is a better version of it's kind of different, but that kind of detective style. I don't know. I'll probably rewatch these and like them more. I'm probably wrong, but I might have said no, and I think it's just because maybe I would have said yes if it were up to me based on his legacy or whatever. But I do think you're just not going to compete, in my opinion, with The Social Network. That's one of the best movies ever. And so I just think he's better later, but I think I'll probably revisit these and, change my mind, but we'll see.
But we've got 2 spots left. Alan, what is your next nomination?
Well, I don't have a lot of options left. left here. I'm going to go with one that, this is iffy, but it's also puts an international filmmaker on the list, and that is John Woo. And John Woo's, obviously, he started, I don't remember when he started, but he made movies in the 80s. And in the 90s is when he moved from Hong Kong to America. One of his last, I think, Hong Kong movies was made in the 90s, which is Hard Boiled. And that movie's awesome. If you haven't seen it, a lot of this is like he redefined a lot of the practical action. And remember, action genre is not known for producing the most quality films, but it's still a genre that we all like secretly love. And I also just, so many people love Face Off. Like they think it's the best, and I think it's pretty good. But in addition to that, you got Bullet in the Head, which is another one of his Hong Kong movies I haven't seen, but Hard Target with Van Damme. And Broken Arrow, I don't think is a very good movie. That was another John Travolta. I think Christian Slater was in that one about stealing a jet or something. But on the strength of Hard Boiled, Hard Target, and Face Off, I'd say give the action genre a little respect. You don't have to, actually. But anyway, John Woo.
Jonathan, what do you say about John Woo?
No, sorry. I look Face Off. I like Face Off. That is a cheesy action movie that I just adore. I mean, it is so crazy. Travolta and Cage, switching faces, even though there are holes in that scenario, but I don't want to go into that. I don't love Broken Arrow. I don't know. It felt like a simple plot. Just Travolta being a bad guy stealing a bomb. And I really don't remember his motivation for that, to be honest. I think he wanted to transport a bomb somewhere. I've not seen Hard Boiled, so I'll probably give that a watch. So I think you sold me on that. Not Once a Thief or Bullet in the Head. Now, my parents are Van Damme fans. I have seen Hard Target. It's a technically well-made movie, but in the end, I did not love it. It was fine. So basically, in the end, I only really like Face Off. So no, sorry.
Chad, what do you have to say about John Woo?
So, John, I really love action. I'm fine with a lot of cheesy action. I've watched a lot of the early Arnolds recently because I'm not a big like Arnie Sly guy. I haven't watched a ton of them, but I've been trying to work my way through a lot of these older movies that I wouldn't have watched when I was a kid. And with John Woo, I've seen almost none of these, but I have seen Face Off, and I basically mirror everything Jonathan said. I love Face Off. I really love Nick Cage a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of Edward Norton, I guess. Where I just really love Nick Cage. That dude can do whatever, and I'll watch it, and it's amazing. Even if it's a bad movie, and I don't think Face Off is a bad movie. I think it's, it's kind of cheesy, but I think it's awesome. It comes like at the very end of the 90s, and I haven't seen any of the other movies that he's done. And I kind of don't like John Woo because he made the worst Mission Impossible movie, and like every single time I try to watch through them, I gotta go, I'm a completionist. I'm weird. I have to watch Mission Impossible 2 again, and it's gonna be boring for about 85% of it. And but I need to watch more of his movies. I'm sure he's a good director with all of his doves and everything. So, but I'm gonna say no for now.
I mean, I personally enjoyed Mission Impossible 2. It's still my least favorite of the franchise out of the Mission Impossibles I've seen, which is the first 3. But I don't hate it. But anyway, that one doesn't have any bearing on this anyway. But to keep it simple, I've only seen Face Off. It's not one of those movies that I think is so good that it catapults them onto this list. It's just a cheesy Nicolas Cage, John Travolta movie. That's it. It's a no.
You got to watch The Killer
Jonathan,
or Hard Boiled. Those two
Okay.
movies are his classics. But
I heard The Killer was great. I need to watch that.
I'll check them out.
but Jonathan, we go back to you for your next nomination.
No, for a while I thought I was going to go last, so that takes off the pressure for me. Who's left? Okay, I'll go with this person. Michael Mann. I'm going to nominate Michael Mann. So, Michael Mann is a very interesting director, but I think he has made 3 very different movies in the 90s. He made The Last of the Mohicans with a great performance by Daniel Day-Lewis, and also a good performances by Madeline Stowe and Wes Studi as Magua, the villain. I think that's a really good movie with a great score. I really enjoyed that. Heat is one of my favorite movies of all time, with De Niro and Pacino going at each other. Mano a Mano, one of the best heist movies ever made. And then The Insider, I think that's an underrated movie. I think it's a really good movie about a whistleblower in the tobacco industry. The whistleblower played by Crow, and then Lowell Bergman, Pacino, wants to cover it on 60 Minutes. But then this whole this whole story, it's basically about Crow being threatened for his life and the family's life by the people in the tobacco industry, this company. And that is a very tense drama / thriller. I personally enjoy that movie a whole lot, and that's a very talkative film. So I love that movie. And so I'm gonna nominate Michael Mann.
Chad, what do you say about Michael Mann?
So, going to his filmography. All right. So, Michael Mann. I see The Last of the Mohicans. I see Heat, and then I see the Insider, and it's huge because there's lots of awards, I guess. I apparently need to see The Insider because I haven't seen it. I have seen the other two. I really like Heat. I really need to watch it again because I don't love it. I don't remember it that much. I think like there's one scene that's like really fantastic between them two in the restaurant or whatever that I really need to rewatch. And with not Dances with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, I have watched that one semi recently, and I didn't really love that movie that much. And I love Daniel Day-Lewis quite a bit, so I was surprised that I didn't really like it all that much. I thought it was kind of boring, but I mean, with a lot of these, I feel like I need to rewatch more than just once, and that's kind of how I am with those two. So I think my feeling on him is just kind of going to be a no for now.
So my thoughts on Michael Mann is I've seen Heat. I think it's fine. I don't know if I've seen The Insider. I think so, but and I've definitely not seen Last Mohicans. But I'm probably going to give it a slight no. As well. It's just because Heat's fine. The other two, I just don't know if they're good enough to go on. But yeah, Alan, what would you say about Michael Mann?
Well, it's a hard pick, and since I don't have to make the decision, it makes it easier. But I love Heat, and I think Michael Mann isn't just a good director in terms of the stories, but he is an amazing technical director. And the way Heat looks and the way it's directed, it's like a brilliant looking movie, and it kind of upped the scale of those types of movies. It also inspired a real life shoot off here in LA, if you don't remember that. But I also I enjoy Last of the Mohicans and The Insider, but they're not really my favorites. But with The Insider, he did show diversity in his directing, because that's a very simple movie in terms of the scale of it. But he creates all kinds of tension and this illusion that this guy's like. I mean, it seemed to be an illusion because nothing ever really happened to the guy. But And yeah, I mean, Last of the Mohicans is a great movie and another technical achievement. I just never remembered feeling like that was a relatable movie as much as it was kind of like a cool spectacle movie. So, you know, I would have probably said yes because I'm such a Heat fan. But I will tell you guys, Michael Mann is known as being one of the meanest directors in the business,
Yeah.
from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And nothing is ever his fault. It's always someone else's fault. And he makes sure to blame people. That's what I've heard anyway. But, you know, that shouldn't factor in, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, I learned like there's a lot of takes. A lot
Oh,
of
really?
takes.
All right.
Yeah. Him and Fincher, for sure.
I love Collateral, by the way.
That's a great one, too. Yeah.
That's a great movie, too.
But yeah, Chad, we go back to you for your next nomination.
Right.
It's getting harder now.
Two more.
It's getting harder.
Shit, man.
Just say Alan Smithy. Alan Smithy.
There's
movies in the 90s.
there's a few of these I have left. I don't have that many, but we're at the end. And one's basically sticking out, I think, more than the others, and it's only two of the movies on his list that I've seen. I'm gonna throw out Jonathan Demme, sure. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, basically, the Silence of the Lambs. I mean, that's like one of the best horror movies ever made. And you know, I'm gonna always go back to the horror or thriller, whatever you want to call it, if it's not a horror movie to you. But like that one is just like, I mean, it win like all these awards. It definitely won Best Picture, and it has
it won the big Oscars.
Yeah, like, you know, has all these great performances. I watched it recently. I love that movie so much. I think that is like one of the best type, like 7 type of movies, actually, like that and Prisoners. And it just, yeah, that's one of the seminal movies. I think it also has its own criterion. And then you have Philadelphia, and I totally saw Philadelphia. I think that movie's really important. And, you know, just like showing how certain people were treated, you know, back in the day with just getting legal representation and, you know, stuff like that. Tom Hanks has AIDS, and, you know, he has a lot of trouble, you know, basically getting help. I don't remember it all that much, but I remember really liking it. And it's one I totally, even though it's a sad movie, I totally want to watch again. I don't know. I just think like just riding on the strength of the Silence of the Lambs, I feel like this is a really good nomination.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, like I've seen Silence of the Lambs. I've seen Philadelphia.
You made Beloved.
Yeah, I'm the same. Those are the only. Yeah, but those are the only ones I've seen. But I've seen both of those. Both of those are really good. I'm going to say yes to Jonathan Demme. I think he is really great with those movies, with how he directed both those movies. Alan, what would you have said about Jonathan Demme?
You know, I think I'm going to go yes for Jonathan Demme. Let's just say it. He did win Oscar for Best Director. And obviously some of the other ones on the list have as well, but that is definitely a qualifier. He wasn't as prolific, you know, in every decade, but Philadelphia is also a fantastic movie, and I think Tom Hanks won Best Supporting Actor for that.
Best Actor.
Is he the lead? Okay, best. I guess Denzel would have been the supporting. And the way in which he'd made Silence of the Lambs, there's so many unique aspects of that movie. People are staring right at the camera like half that movie, and it really makes you feel uncomfortable when like a conversation is happening and it's kind of like back and forth like that. He's done that in some other movies too. But again, you know, not as prolific, but he won a lot of Oscars for people in that decade. So I'll give him a yes.
And Jonathan, what would you have said about Jonathan Demme?
What I would have said about Jonathan Demme is Demme. So here's a surprise. He was on my list.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, The Silence of the Lambs is a masterpiece, in my opinion. I think that movie, horror thriller. Sorry, I had to look at something here. Okay, horror thriller. You got to look at not beyond the direction, beyond the acting of two sublime performances. Actually, 3 or 4 sublime performances. Foster Hopkins, Ted Levine, and Scott Glenn. They're all great. And then you look at the details regarding what the Buffalo Bill's up to, and also the subliminal messages about the woman on the force. You know, she's tired. Like there's a lot of men in the FBI, and then she's the one who is leading the investigation. So yeah, it's an excellent movie. Philadelphia, I recently watched. It's a very good movie. It's a very powerful movie that holds up, regarding AIDS, legal representation, all that holds up. It's a sad movie for sure, but it also features 2 great performances from Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington, including Jason Robards, Mary Steenburgen, Antonio Banderas. And I've not seen Beloved, but I heard okay things. But on the strength of those 2 movies, Silence of the Lambs and Philadelphia, yeah, I put them on my list for sure.
All right.
But yeah, for my last nomination, I was just looking at the list there. I'd say a lot of directors who've done well, like a lot of different genres. There isn't a lot of people who've done really good, like in family films. So my next nomination is going to be someone who I think has done some of the best family films that came out in the 90s. 2 of which people usually watch during this time of the year. I'm bringing up Chris Columbus. He did Home Alone, Home Alone 2, Mrs. Doubtfire. He did a movie called Only the Lonely, 9 Months, Stepmom, Bicentennial Man.
Oh God,
I love a lot of those movies. I've not seen Only the Lonely or Stepmom, but everything else, I have varying degrees of love for. Like the Home Alone 1 and 2 are the best 2 Home Alone ones. I know people may argue that Home Alone 3 is pretty good, but that wasn't directed by Chris Columbus, so that doesn't matter. But Bicentennial is one of those movies which I enjoy, but I know that a lot of people don't like it as well. Mrs. Doubtfire is probably one of my favorite movies of the 90s. I try to watch that as much as I can every year. But Alan, what do you say about Chris Columbus?
Well, I'm going to say as little as possible here because I'm going to go with a no on Chris Columbus. My favorite Chris Columbus movies are movies he's written, like Goonies. But I'm just not a huge Home Alone fan. So that's almost like a substantial portion of that decade. I need to revisit Mrs. Doubtfire because a lot of people do love that movie, and I just have only seen it one time. But yeah, I'm going to have to say no myself for Chris Columbus. But we'll see what these other gentlemen have to say. If they'll save him from the pit.
Jonathan, what do you say about Chris Columbus?
That's a good pick. That's a good pick. Okay. Home Alone is one of my favorite Christmas movies. Favorite comedies for sure. Home Alone 2 is not bad. I like Home Alone 2. Only the Lonely I have seen. That's an underrated movie. It has a good performance by John Candy. It's just good. 9 Months is not good. I don't like 9 Months. Stepmom, Bicentennial Man. I like half of the movie when he's a robot, but the other half I felt like wasn't really good. And Mrs. Doubtfire is one of my favorite comedies. Personally, one of my favorite Robin Williams movies. However, there's a better movie of that subgenre, and that is Tootsie. I think Tootsie is a better movie, featuring a guy who has to go in a woman's suit or has to play a woman. Oh, this is a tough call. I gotta go a marginal no. Sorry, there are 2 directors left. Well, there's 1 spot left, but there are 2 directors on my list that I felt like one is heavily neglected, and we haven't brought him up at all, despite what we said about one of the movies earlier. So, yeah, marginal no.
So Chad, it's all on you.
Well, I think we had 2 no's, didn't we?
Yeah,
So-
Alan said no.
Oh,
Yeah.
what
So-
would you say?
So it's all on me. I'm the bad guy.
Because I basically don't matter here. I'll go with how I really feel. I had Chris Columbus on my list, but I did have him a little lower. And the reason why I had him a little lower, this dude totally made my childhood. I watched. I've seen Mrs. Doubtfire a lot when I was a kid. I loved that movie when I was a kid. I have not really seen it as an adult. I kind of want to now. Bicentennial Man, I also saw when I was a child. I don't really think I liked it all that much because I was expecting funny Robin Williams, and instead, it was like a serious movie. So I don't think I really got that movie, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be really that good. And also, Chris Columbus has kind of a rocky filmography where he'll have like a few great ones, and then he'll have a bunch of like bad ones, and you're like, okay. So he's not super careful, I guess, with the projects that he picks. But the movies that he's done that I love are some of my favorite movies. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. And so he kicked off that franchise with the first 2. And I know not a lot of people like those first 2, but I love those first 2 movies. And it would help him so much in this argument if those 2 movies, I feel like, were in the 90s, but they were like right around the best time when I was like 11 and 12. But Home Alone and Home Alone 2 make my year every year. I love those movies so much. I just watched Home Alone with a Dan Murrell commentary, and it's fantastic. I would have totally said yes to this just because of my nostalgic heart here, but
yeah, Home Alone 2 is playing right now.
And also, another thing is the movies that made us. There's a really great episode on how Home Alone got made there, so I would check that out.
That was very interesting.
Uh-oh, is it on me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I only have, what's up? I'm sorry.
So Alan, there's 1 spot left.
I only have 2 people left on my list, a man and a woman. Unfortunately, I think the man has more of the good movies. So I'm going to go with Paul Anderson.
Ooh.
No, I'm
Which
just kidding.
one?
I'm going with Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson. PTA. No, I'm not rooting for the Resident Evil movies. That's But PTA in the 90s, he made 3 movies, but all of them were great movies. Hard 8 was I believe that was his premiere movie. Boogie Nights. Who doesn't love Boogie Nights? Maybe one of you. I don't know. And Magnolia. Magnolia is a movie I loved so much that I watched it to the point where I can't watch it anymore. Like when you watch something super dramatic too much, I can't handle watching that movie anymore because there's just so much like random drama going on in that thing. And Boogie Nights is a great film. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hard 8, but it is also, I think he did that through the Sundance Institute, and that was like his Sundance project. So it's a smaller movie, but it's a fantastic movie. John C. Reilly is great in that. I think Gwyneth Paltrow is the female lead. Baker, what's his name?
Philip Baker Hall.
Hall is the
Philip Baker Hall.
He's the lead, and I think he's passed on by now, but he was also in Magnolia as well. Is he still around?
Yeah, he's still alive.
Right. But anyway, so 3 movies, all revered as very well-made movies, and PTA pretty much is considered one of the best directors around. So what do you guys think? Oh, Carol's like...
Jonathan, what do you say
That must
about
not have been on your
Thomas
list.
Anderson?
Oh boy, man, he is a great director. He is a great director. Because I was saving for somebody else. Oh,
Well, there's still 2 other votes after you, so
I know.
vote with your heart.
I know. Okay, Hard 8 is good. I did like the movie, but it's been a while. Boogie Nights is a great movie. I loved it. It was in my top 25 in the 90s, so we'll leave it there. Magnolia is the interesting one, and I actually can't wait to hear what Chad and Malcolm is going to say about Magnolia, if whether they've seen it or not. Yeah, Magnolia is an interesting 3-hour film where a lot of things are going on, but they intersect very well of the chaos, the little chaos things going on in their stories, and then it just builds upon one of the more weird revelations I've ever seen on film. But when you look at it very carefully and analyze it very carefully, it sort of makes sense if you think about it. I'm not going to reveal it, what it is, but wow. You know what? You know what, Alan? I think I'm going to go yes.
All right. The other one is Resident Evil guy's good too. But,
I don't know about that.
Chad, what do you say about Paul Thomas Anderson?
So, yeah, I haven't seen Heart 8 or Magnolia. I kind of want to see Magnolia specifically now. I've seen the poster throughout my childhood. I just never actually got around to watching that one. I have seen Boogie Nights. I think that movie is awesome, and I want to watch it again. I've only seen it once, but I remember liking it. But I will say with Paul Thomas Anderson, I love 2000s Paul Thomas Anderson because I love There Will Be Blood and Punch Drunk Love, dude. Punch Drunk Love, I think, might be his best movie, to be honest, because I saw it when I was a kid. Well, There Will Be Blood, sure, okay, but Punch Drunk Love is fantastic, and that movie I saw it as a kid. I was too young, but then I have the criterion now, and I watched. I was a big Adam Sandler fan. I watched it recently, and it's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's 2000s. So I don't know. This is tough because I think Boogie Nights is great, but it's just I haven't seen so many of his work in the 90s that I can't really judge him. So I'll just say a like a no abstain type of deal, I guess.
But yeah, I've not seen Hard 8. I've seen Magnolia. I've seen Boogie Nights. Oh, I'm not a big fan of Boogie Nights, but I think Magnolia is really great. And because of Magnolia is why I'm saying yes. Paul Thomas Anderson's making this list.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised at how much I loved it. Like, I know there's a few people in the, especially the family community, that are really not big fans.
The show is over. We're done. Is that 12?
Yeah.
That was the full list.
Ooh. It is 12.
Wow. That
was a shout out
for me.
That I did put Jane Campion was the other one I had on my list.
That was number 14.
I think The Piano is an amazing movie. And I actually like the movie she made with Nicole Kidman called Portrait of a Lady, but that wasn't really a big hit or anything. And then the other movies I didn't like as much. So
you didn't like An Angel at My Table?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going further with the one Holy Smoke, and that. But I actually haven't seen that one, so I have to see that one.
Okay.
But I have seen Sweetie was another one she made in the 80s.
Yeah, I haven't really seen a lot of Jane Campion's earlier stuff, so I probably would give it a no. But with that being said, Jonathan, what honorable mentions did you have?
So my next pick was Robert Zemeckis. So yeah, that was like, because you put me in a tough spot with Anderson and Zemeckis in the 90s.
Okay.
But there are a couple of others I had left. I had Tony Scott left. So
you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, Tony Scott. I had Ang Lee. Mm-hmm. I had Catherine Bigelow. That was my other one. And believe it or not, I had two more. I'm sorry. I had the Farrelly brothers, and I had two more after that. Okay. Richard Linklater, and F. Gary Gray.
Chad, do you have any honorable mentions left?
Yep. I had the Wachowskis. I was not sure if The Matrix was strong enough to get it on the list, but I had the Wachowskis on there for sure. I haven't seen the other one they did. And I definitely had Richard Linklater. I should have brought him up earlier because it probably would have got on, I guess. Because I think Dazed and Confused and Before Sunrise are some of the best movies ever made. I love those movies so much.
All right.
Definitely check out the Before series. I also had Robert Zemeckis, and I was kind of saving this just in case I got around to it. But I had Henry Selick for The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
James and the Giant Peach. That's why I didn't comment on the certain Nightmare Before Christmas, just in case I got to that. I was like,
oh, right.
Dude, the stop motion crushed it. So, anyways, those are all I had.
Shout out to Terry Gilliam too. I didn't put him on the list.
Only
But,
Brazil had been in the 90s. I totally.
well, no, that was 80s. Like Fisher King, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys.
I love 12 Monkeys.
So he was like number 13 for me.
But yes, some that we've got people commenting in the chat, like we've got Leo brought up Ridley Scott, who I did have in the thumbnail, but he's one of those ones, like, as someone pointed it out, like, he's not really done a lot in the 90s. He's more later, so
I thought that was his weakest decade.
Right.
Honest.
Yeah. He also brought up Terry Gilliam. Brian brought up Barry Sonnenfeld. Leo brought up Roland Emmerich.
He's a big one.
Stargate is great. Independence Day was really nice.
Stargate Independence Day? Oh, sure.
Good call.
Gus
Good call.
Tom Shedrick.
I forgot.
And someone who I'm actually surprised hadn't come up is Ron Howard.
True.
Right.
But that being said, we get to the fun.
Yeah, I would have said heavy yes to Linklater. I should have nominated Linklater instead of Mann. Oh well.
Oh well.
But with that, we get to the fun part of ranking these. And if there is a 2-2 split, then we'll go to the chat for that. But for 12, I've actually got the Coen brothers.
Wait, is this last place? Are we going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You want me to go next?
I'm sorry, are you waiting for me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, for that, I'll put PTA in 12th.
Jonathan, who do you have for?
I had to be that person and nominate a woman first, but Penny Marshall.
How dare you?
And Chad, who do you have for?
You did that, Jonathan. Oh yeah, I did too. Sorry. It wasn't a
Chad, who did you have for 12?
Oh, I had Penny Marshall.
Penny Marshall.
I did the same thing.
But with that, Penny Marshall will be 12.
Oh boy. It's hard. Okay, let's see.
But Alan, who do you have for 12? 11. Sorry.
11. I put Kevin Goodenough Smith.
Jonathan.
You know what? I'm changing my vote. That's it. Actually, yeah, I think. Yeah, I'll go with it. Kevin Smith.
All right.
Chad.
Yeah, Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I went PTA, but I guess it'll be Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've stuck with the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
Just have to make sure doors locked so Rachel can't break into the stream and yell at us. But
Okay. Making them, it's tough.
Is she in the chat watching?
no. I mean, she might be. We've got 4 people watching, so.
Okay. Here we
But
go.
I dare say, if she was, we would have known about it when she given some support up. But Jonathan, who do you have for 10?
Tim Burton.
Chad.
I stuck with Paul Thomas Anderson.
I stuck with Coen Brothers.
He's still going, but I went PTA as well for this one.
That's fair. This is getting harder. We done?
I'm ready.
Chad, who do you have for 9?
I went Fincher. I know it probably won't be him, but
I was going to stick with the Coen Brothers, but I think it's going to be a fool's errand to do that. But I'm actually going to what potentially might be a hot day, because Pulp Fiction is great, but I'm not. The other ones aren't. I went Tarantino. Alan.
Well, I keyed off of what someone else wrote, and I just went Tim Burton for this slot. So we might
Oh
have a-
crap! Why did I change it? You know
Is that you?
You know what? Yeah, Tim Burton. Yeah, I'll put Tim Burton. Tim Burton. Yeah, Tim Burton. Yeah.
Who's next? Let's see.
Ugh, it gets harder and harder. Oh boy.
That's what she says.
Yeah. Okay. It's getting more difficult. Okay. Now this one I'm confident. I'm not gonna change it.
But anyway, for 8, I'm sticking with Tarantino. Alan.
Although we decided he's great, I went with Jonathan Demme because not enough films.
Jonathan.
Spike Lee.
And Chad.
very interesting. I also changed to Spike Lee.
All right.
Oh. I think that it's gonna be this next pick's gonna be easy, actually.
Just to recap who we've got left, got Spielberg, Coen Brothers, Tarantino, Scorsese, James Cameron, David Fincher, and Jonathan Demme. But Alan is furiously writing. Jonathan, who do you have for 7?
Jonathan Demme.
Chad.
1 second. I'm good with Jonathan Demme being here.
I'm sticking with Tarantino as I hold my board up the long way round. Alan.
I went Demme as well.
Yeah. Higher than I thought. Yeah. Demme. The top 6 is the most difficult. I gotta be honest. Oh man.
Chad, who do you have for 6?
I'm gonna try for him again, David Fincher.
Yeah, I changed from Tarantino. I put James Cameron. Alan.
I'm going David Fincher as well.
And Jonathan.
David Fincher.
Bing, bing. We got that confirmation.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, Fincher's not gonna like that. Being out of the top 5. Boy. Oh man. Top 5. Okay. We're talking 90s, only 90s. So I gotta. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Alan, who do you have for 5?
Quentin Tarantino. That looks like an E though, but that's a no.
Jonathan.
Martin Scorsese.
Chad.
I can't believe you. Yeah, Martin Scorsese.
Oh no, Malcolm, did you put Tarantino?
I didn't. I'm still at James Cameron.
Oh,
I mean, it's one of those ones like I was looking at the list of like things like, oh yeah, Tarantino's probably not going to go soon anyway. But Martin Scorsese is going to be 5. I mean, top 5 not bad really.
it's not bad. Okay, this one.
Is James Cameron still on the table?
Yeah, he's still on the
Okay.
table.
Yeah.
All right.
You know what?
We've got Spielberg, the Coen Brothers, Tarantino, and James Cameron left.
Yeah, I'm okay with this one.
But with that being said, Jonathan, who do you have for 4?
Well, we both have the same initials, so James Cameron.
Chad.
I went Coen Brothers with this one.
I went James Cameron. Alan.
I also went James Cameron.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. Get that.
Chad, who did you go for number 3?
I'm gonna stick with Coen Brothers.
I also put the Coen Brothers. Alan.
I put Quentin Tarantino.
Oh,
It's
this is gonna be interesting.
Jonathan.
I put Tarantino.
That's we're tied.
So we are going to the chat. So chat, Coen Brothers or Quentin Tarantino. The first one I see pop up in the chat will be decides here. Otherwise, I will go get my phone to do to a reel.
Wait, Bryan Singer? What? Just kidding.
We're talking about number 3, so
Yeah,
Ooh, there's an
Leo
answer
was the
there.
first one in there, and he put Tarantino.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the easiest.
And now this one,
decision.
instead of putting number 2, we go straight to number 1 because the other one will automatically be number 2 regardless.
This one's easy.
Ooh. Easy. We'll see what happens.
I mean, he was this person or persons was the director of the 90s. I mean,
this is I think based on that, I know where you're going. But Alan, who do you have as your number 1?
Oh, for my number 1? Oh, I
Yeah.
wrote down my number 2, Coen Brothers. I'm going number 1. That's my number 1.
Jonathan,
my number 1 is Steven Spielberg.
Chad,
Ooh, Spielberg. Yeah, it's definitely fucking Steven Spielberg. Number 1 for sure.
yeah, definitely Spielberg.
I should have said that I'm wearing his hat. You know what I mean? But I've gotten guilted many years for liking Steven Spielberg. A lot of people don't like him. But anyway.
I like this top 12. This is
I
a
mean-
great top 12.
I think so.
I think it is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
But just to recap, the list at number 12 we've got Penny Marshall. At 11 we've got Kevin Smith. At 10 we've got Paul Thomas Anderson. At 9 we've got Tim Burton. At 8 we've got Spike Lee. At 7 we've got Jonathan Demme. At 6 we've got David Fincher. At 5 we've got Martin Scorsese. At 4 we've got James Cameron. At 3 we've got Tarantino. At 2 we've got the Coen Brothers. At 1, I'm pretty sure I spelled his name wrong. I put Steven Spielberg or Senior Spielberg. But with that being said, that brings us to the end of another list. Coming up next week, in what will be back on its normal day of Saturday, we do have, once I find the banner, top 12 movie centers, and that'll be the last episode of ranking for the year. And then we'll start back up in January for top 12 movies of 2020, which is one of those ones that, yes, there was movies. Yes, the quality may not be as vast as it was the other years. But,
Wonder Woman will come out finally, right?
Yeah. Sure.
But with that being said, Alan, where can people find you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter at my alias, which is Ryan G. Chandler 1. And I'm on Facebook too, under Alan Smithy.
Jonathan, where can people find you online?
You can find me on all social media platforms, on Twitter and Instagram, JohnCaro4. I also have a Letterboxd. Just type in my name. And also on Sunday, I will be competing in a Pixar trivia contest in the Action Army Brats channel, and I'm competing against a couple of people by the name of let me look. You may know Megan from Call to Action.
Dr. Meggs.
Yep, Dr. Meggs is one of them, and Jeremiah Morris, or Brett Sheridan calls him Jeremiah. I don't want to yell at the top of my lungs, but yeah, that's going to be fun. And hopefully if I get picked, classic.
All right.
But Shad, where can people find you online?
Top movie of 2020, Unhinged. No, just kidding. Check out Sound of Metal. The movie is fantastic. Yeah, you can. I haven't really actually been doing a lot of trivia and stuff lately. I'm thinking about maybe trying to ramp something up with that maybe in 2021. We'll see. Hopefully it's a better year. I just have been doing like stuff on Letterboxd pretty much. I think it's just Chadwick_Webb. And then I mean that's pretty much all I've been doing. So yeah.
And I'm sure we will all be at the Schmodown Spectacular 5 tomorrow.
Yes,
I'll be checking that out for sure.
Yeah. Depending on if I wake up in time, I'll probably be there from the start. But you can all find me on Tape 3 Productions, where I host Rankin and Late Night Tape 3. A little bit earlier, me and Ryan Payne, we did a impromptu Late Night Tape 3 episode where we broke down all the news that came out yesterday from the Disney Investors Day. But you can also find me over on Full Metal. I host Classics on Sundays and Full Metal Random. Full Metal Random this week is going to be Christopher Nolan movies. I'm sad he wasn't brought up. I mean, he had the following in Mementos, but you also find me on. But before Classic on Sunday, you also find me over on FPTL competing in the tag match. I'm teamed up against Jackson Latner, and we're taking on the team of Joe Farrelly and Jonathan Knowles. So it's bound to be a fun match. I need to make sure that it finishes on time, so I can start Classic on time. So Tony, I didn't mean to ingest. But with that being said, until next time, keep listening. Shit.